Kind of the guy for refinishing antiques around here. But anyway, Alan Noel.
Thank you. I too have sanded my skin off, and it hurts really bad, but it doesn't hurt as bad as the skeleton. You know, no more. I had the surgery done, so that's why I've noticed. I'm Alan Noel. I own a refinishing shop, and I've been in business for like 32 years now. And I'm here for your questions and explanations, anything you need to know about finishing. Here I am. Hit me.
I noticed that your shop's really close to where I work. Do you allow people to come see your shop? Or?
You can come and work for free.
What you need for getting more work? You can be an intern.
Actually, I took 3 teaching classes. People offer their services all the time, so I have about 4 people that come in and work for free now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's a good experience, and you learn a lot real fast.
I bet you do. You do. Yeah.
You learn exactly what not to do. Don't do that. Don't touch that. Well, let me ask you guys a couple of questions real quick, okay? How many of you guys have shops? Well, all of you got shops. How many of you guys know where everything is in your shop? How many of you guys are lying? Huh? I probably bought the same thing 5 times, you know. So let that be a lesson. Clean your shop out twice a year, then you know what you have. Because I sure don't know what I have. All right, questions?
If you just open it up for general questions, I'm refinishing. I want to refinish my front door, and a friend of mine tried that a couple of years ago, and I mean that thing was it looked worse when he refinished it than when he did when he first took it down. And basically, I think he tried to sand it and put some kind of a finish on it, but it bubbled and flaked like you would not believe.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. I don't want to repeat his mistake.
All right.
What's the best way to refinish a front door that's going to be exposed to about 60% sunlight?
Well, that's the key. The sunlight, the exposure makes the wood move, you know, a whole lot. Just from morning to afternoon, if you get afternoon sun, your door's really going to heat up in the afternoon. It's going to really swell off, expand. And that's what causes the failures, the constant movement of the wood back and forth from that heat, especially in the south. And the biggest failure that I see when people ask me about their doors is usually it fails on the bottom first and starts creeping up, or at the top it starts creeping down and starts bubbling and all that. And that's because you don't put as much finish on the top and the bottom as you do on the face. So you got to finish the top and the bottom and the sides equally as well as you finish the face and the back. But to be frank, well, first of all, never try to sand the finish off. You cannot sand finishes off evenly. You're going to get a wavy surface or something like that. Always take it off chemically. It's dramatically faster and more efficient, and you can get the job done so much faster. You just take it off chemically. Scrub it. What I advise my clients to do, and quite frankly, is just on the paint, because the sunlight. You're looking at maintenance of about maybe every 6 to 8 months. You need to sand that finish and recoat it, all 6 sides. And if you don't do that, then it's going to fail. You know. Pretty quickly within a year, and then you got to redo it again. You know, it's a maintenance thing, and is it worth the trouble to do this every year on your door? Because we see it all the time. The doors, they fail within a year. Even like brand new construction have these new water-based finishes on varnishes. They're good varnishes and all that, but nothing can withstand direct sunlight in the south for a long period of time. And plus the humidity and all that. Once the finish starts to crack, the moisture gets through it, makes the finish, makes the wood expand even more dramatically, so the finish can't hold on anymore, it just falls off. It starts to fall off. If you do a finishing project and the sun hits it, within, say, you know, a couple of days, and you see some bubbles from it, that means you have some type of thinner still trapped in the finish, and the expansion from the sun makes that gas come forward and causes the bubbles. What happens there? Does that answer your question?
It gets me further along the road, yeah. Are you saying that no matter what I do to it, every year or so, we're going to have to take the door down and redo it again?
Well, you're fighting Mother Nature, and that's just the harsh truth in the South. That I mean, you know, if you sit out in the sun for a whole summer and let the sun bake you all afternoon, how are you going to look? It basically what causes everything to go south is just simply the wild wood movement from hot and cold. And you know, that's what causes cracks in the finish to begin with, and that's what causes the fail.
Look.
I mean, you know, sometimes the answers aren't what we want to hear, but it's the truth, you know, sunlight.
I was waiting for that magic bullet, I guess.
Yeah, and I tell every class there's no magic in finishing, it's all, you know.
I have an antique wooden bed that is done in marquetry, and the main problem is that now it's just turning dark. I mean, you know, it's just dark from being so old. And I wondered about lightening it up somehow, or if it's just like a total project.
Is it the original finish?
I think it is.
And the finish is turning darker and darker with age?
Mm-hmm.
You know how old the finish is?
I have no idea.
Oh, is it reddish? Kind of garnet red?
No.
No, just brown. That's probably, let's just say if it's before 1920, more than likely that's a shellac finish. If the shellac finishes oxidize and get very dark, they'll actually turn black over time. So I would assume that you have a shellac finish in your bed. One thing you could try in in an area that you can't see, say like on the bottom of the leg, is take a piece of old flannel and ball it up real tight, put some alcohol in it, and just lightly wipe up the area of it and see if it brightens right up. If it does, then you can probably wet sand the whole piece with 600 wet dry paper using mineral spirits, and it'll brighten right back up because the oxidation is usually pretty close to the surface. Does that help you?
Okay, it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bought that little table in, belonged to my wife's grandparents. I have no idea how old it is or anything else.
All right. You want to sit up here? Joey did. Well, this is, I take people through the Scott Antique Show, and so they can see various pieces of furniture and teach them how to look at things, so you can kind of date them yourself. First of all, I mean, I know that this was made somewhere around 1950 myself, but when you look at the carving here, especially, you can see symmetrically it's perfect. This side exactly mirrors the other side. That tells you it's machine carved right there. Because if it was carved by a human being, one side would look better than the other simply because people are left-handed or right-handed. So one side of the carving is going to look better than the other. So when you look at something that has symmetry like this, the same thing on both sides, if you see irregularities, 9 times out of 10 it's hand carved. Also, the depth of cut is very, very uniform. That means overhead router. So that's what you look for there. And it's evident down here. This piece is exactly the same as this piece over here. So you can see that this is a completely machine-made piece of furniture. It has a lacquer finish on it, and it's supposed to look like walnut. The paint decoration is still in good condition, and I mean the table's in really good condition. Just a little sprucing up. This appears to be walnut right here. Yeah, this is walnut. So you got walnut here and walnut veneer here, and the base wood itself is walnut too. So it's a solid walnut table, but it's still a completely machine-made table and glued together. Okay. Anything else you want to know about it?
Well, the top there got some scratches on it because the standoffs on that last thing, I guess, aren't high enough. And,
yeah, they may have worn down.
Yeah.
You can just put a little felt right there or something like that. Take care of that. It's still in pretty good condition. You know, it's like when you see cracks like this, the crack, that's just where it's just shrinking, and the grain pattern right there causes it to crack. If you cleaned it up with Gojo hand cleaner, that's what we use on everything, It really cleans the heck out of the surface and doesn't hurt it at all. I think it'll brighten up nicely. Your painted surface here, this is actually hand decorated. That'll come back to life. All of this is hand decorated. So that's pretty good.
You said what kind of
cleaner?
Gojo hand cleaner.
Gojo?
You know, mechanics use waterless hand cleaner, D&L Gojo. Buy the stuff without the pumice in it, and it's spectacular. It cleans stuff just great. A lot of times we're really surprised at how far we can bring something back. Instead of taking the finish off of it, it brings the finish back beautifully. I mean, as far as these little scratches go right here, you could probably take a little Old English scratch cover and just rub a little bit on it, and I'll make those disappear. You know? And I would suggest you put a coat of shoe polish on, brown shoe polish. And, well, you know, talking in stores, but the reason I say shoe polish is because if you buy a can of Kiwi shoe polish, it says on the back, great for furniture. And because it says Kiwi, it's $3, and furniture, if it says, you know, furniture wax is probably $25 a can, and the only difference is $23 or $22. That is the only difference. Shoe polish works fantastic in furniture.
What do you think about the Howard restorer?
I don't use it. I just don't use it.
You think there are any problems with it, or?
Well, Howard's Restore Finish, it's got wax in it, but it also has other chemicals in it to get, like if your finish looks like it's separating a little bit, it kind of gets behind there and makes it wet to give you the appearance that it's doing some good, but actually it makes it even worse. Anytime you put liquids on your furniture or your woodworking, you're actually not doing it any good at all. You're actually harming your furniture. I'll explain why. Everybody can see the bench here. The grain pattern is going in this direction like this, okay? So we all know that wood expands and contracts across the grain like this, correct? All right. Once you put a finish on it, a film forming finish, not a penetrating oil or wax, so like you put a couple coats of varnish on your front door. That movement of that front door back and forth means that over time the finish will cure, and what causes the finish to, what allows the finish to expand and contract with temperature and humidity and all that is plasticizers. And that's the new car smell in your car. Finishes have the same thing in them because finishes are plastics. When the plasticizers completely dissipate from the finish itself, that means the finish is getting harder and harder and harder. And once it reaches a certain point, all the plasticizers are gone. Okay? So when that happens, the finish is as hard as it's going to get, and it doesn't want to move anymore when it gets hot or cold. It doesn't want to move with barometric pressure or hot and cold. So that means something has to give. And usually the wood's this thick and the finish is microscopically thin, so the finish has to give. So over a period of time, through the seasons, you collect more cracks in your finish, and these cracks are so small that you really can't see them with the naked eye. But you can see them under a microscope or under magnification. And so what happens is over time, every time the seasons happen, the finish cracks more and more and more, and that's what causes, like a dining room table that has a beautifully polished mirror finish on it, to dull over time. It's just like a car in a junkyard. That steel's going back and forth, that finish starts to crack, and everything gets hazy and dull. But if you go out there with some compound and some good wax, you can compound it and wax it and bring the color back, okay? So what you're doing there is you're actually taking off a microscopic layer of the finish. And the way you treat furniture is, if you put oil on your furniture, it seeps into those little teeny cracks that you can't see and gets under the finish. Because if you looked at the finish from the side view, you would see it looks like a sponge. It's kind of cavernous under there, especially when it starts to crack. And when the oil gets into the finish, over time people keep on oiling their furniture, put mineral oil, whatever. That collects under the finish and evaporates and makes the finish look milky. Has anybody ever seen that effect, milky looking furniture? That's from putting oil polishes on your furniture. And let me say this, there's absolutely no such thing as oil furniture polish. There's no such thing as furniture polish. All that is mineral oil with lemon scent. They're not going to squeeze a billion lemons to give you some lemon oil. It's just no way. So it's mineral oil with lemon scent and some mineral spirits to make it poisonous so you can't drink it as a laxative. Because mineral oil is a laxative. It does not, all it does is hurt your finishes, and when the oil migrates through the finish, because it's going to do that, and gets to the wood sucks in that moisture from the oil and expands even farther, and that causes the finish just to let go altogether. If you've seen a finish that you can scrape off with a fingernail, you know they're probably oiling it for a long time. And that's why oil polishes make your finishes fail. There's no such thing as liquid furniture polish. Only paste wax. Good old Kiwi shoe polish is the best. Costs $3 and it's outstanding. Fills all those little clogs, those little pores. I mean, cracks that some moisture can't get through it and protects your furniture. Putting oil on it exacerbates the situation.
I've been cleaning bowls and stuff with mineral spirit to get all the dust particles and stuff off like that. Is there any period of time you should wait before you do anything else after putting the mineral spirit on it?
Why are you putting mineral spirits on your bowl to just clean off the dust?
Clean off the dust, yeah.
And what's on the bowl to begin with?
Just bare wood.
Just bare wood?
Yeah. Just turn.
Okay, and why are you putting mineral spirits on it?
It picks up the dust and gives it a better shine to the.
Okay. I would suggest buying tack cloths. I would use a tack cloth. You can buy them here, sure. Tack cloth is just a soft cloth. You put some varnish in it, and it just becomes sticky. And you don't press when you use a tack cloth. You just use it gently and it pulls all the dust off the surfaces. Or just maybe a damp cloth. I wouldn't put mineral spirits on raw wood constantly. I wouldn't do that because it's going to absorb. I mean, it does dry out, but I wouldn't use that for dusting.
Thank you.
My wife watches Antiques Roadshow, therefore I also watch Antiques Roadshow. And sometimes they'll bring a beautiful table out and they'll look at it and say, oh, yeah, it's got a beautiful finish and everything, but if you hadn't touched it, it would have been worth 4 times as much. How do you tell when a cruddy finish is worth a lot and a beautiful finish is worth less?
All right. This is a very easy question. Back in the mid-90s, a magazine was started called Finishing and Restoration, and I was one of the editors of it. And we decided to get in touch with the Antique Roadshow to dispel some myths that they perpetuate on the show. First of all, say like you have your mother's dining room table that Duncan Fike built himself back in 1770 in his shop. And it had a finish on and all that kind of stuff, and sold to families, survived all the way to your grandmother, or your mother, or your wife. So they take it to the Antique Roadshow, and the Keno brothers say, oh, this is the original finish, this thing is worth so much money, but if it hadn't had the original finish on it, then you lessen the value by 90%. Okay, well, the first question you ask the Keno brothers, well, this thing was built in the mid-1700s. Were you there when it was built and you knew what the original finish actually is? And they'd have to say no. They don't know. So, point being is this. People that had means in that period of time, they could afford to have furniture custom built for them. So, like, if anybody's familiar with the Biggs Furniture Company, they make reproductions in Richmond, Virginia. From the 50s, probably, I think they got bought up in the early 80s. Anybody ever heard of Biggs?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Biggs Company used original plans from these shops. They had copies of them. And if you wanted the sideboard, you would have to buy like the manufacturer sideboard. You gave all these options from the sets of plans they had for various pieces of furniture from the original shop building it back then. So you got a true reproduction of what they were making. And it wasn't as decorative as we think it is. It's pretty plain stuff. But the point being is this. The first finishes they had in America was nothing but wax and varnish. If you could make a varnish that would actually dry, because they didn't really have any real chemistry in those days. So if somebody made a varnish and it actually dried hard and stayed on the wood for a long time, that's a trade secret. He made that varnish only because he could sell it, with dry and all this kind of stuff. So does anybody know the most famous varnish maker of all time? Any ideas? Stradivari, that's exactly right. Because his varnishes are still viable on those instruments today. So, and he took that to his grave. Nobody knows how he did it. And back in those days, when you're a fast person and you had a secret, you didn't give it to anybody. You took it to your grave. And so far, we can't figure out how he made it. And that's, I think, sustainable. We cannot figure out how he made his varnish.
And a follow-up question on your Gojo suggestion that you mentioned there. Would that work on Jane's headboard?
Not really. Gojo would take off the grind, but it won't remove any finish. So you're going to have to kind of grind the finish with some sandpaper to see what's below it. I would imagine that I mean, in my shop, I know we could wet sand and bring it back without taking the finish off. Because if it's a shellac finish, it's oxidizing and turning dark to beige. And that's not very deep into the finish, so if you're good at wet sand, you can wet sand all the way, and then just put a clear coat back over top of it, and you're ready to go.
So back to that original question. Having the finish redone on an old piece of furniture, does that diminish the value of the furniture?
Okay, back to the furniture. I'm sorry, I didn't have to go off the game. One thing leads to another. Okay, antique furniture. So, shellac was actually introduced into the States somewhere in 1760, 1770, somewhere in there. And that was the first actual viable varnish, spirit-based varnish that was dry clear, serviceable. You knew exactly what the results were going to be year after year after year. You knew you could take that finish off and put a fresh finish over top of it. You knew you could put finish over finish. So it was actually the first real finishing material for fine furniture. And if you had means in those days, you could actually afford to have the stuff built, then you could afford to have that wax taken off and have a shellac, because that would make it dramatically shinier and prettier and enhance the wood better and make it brighter in the room, because they had candles, they didn't have electricity. So anything that was very bright helped reflect the light and all that. So if they see a finish, if the Kino brothers see a finish like the shellac finish, they're just guessing that that's the original finish. Maybe there was a previous finish up top of that that was wax, and that's all they had, or somebody made a varnish that faded. So because of that, if you watch the Antique Roadshow lately, they'll say, you know, this piece has the original finish on it, I think. We think. They never take credit by themselves completely. You know, they'll say, we think. My colleagues and I think. And the reason they do that is because they don't know if that's the original finish or not. And they also say, now if you listen to them, they say this piece would be worth more if you had a professional restorer. You hear that too? Yeah, so they had to back up a whole lot and change the way they verbalize things on the TV shows, because we got on them about poo-pooing our industry. I know that what we do enhances what we, the furniture that we do. Has anybody here been in my shop? Okay. Well, you're welcome anytime.
Where is it?
It's in Chamblee.
Where is your shop?
In Chamblee. I'll give you my phone number for you, and you can come on by and look at it all you want.
An address.
I'll give you an address and all that.
Where work close?
Yeah, we're work close, and yes.
I've got a 55-year-old swinging cradle that my children use, my grandchildren use, and now I got a great-grandchild coming, and my wife wants me to refinish it. And it has scratches, it has no gouges or anything like that. If I clean it with the Mojo that you're talking about, then should I do the paste shoe polish wax that you're talking about to see what it does to the scratches? Or how would I go about making sure? And I guess after that, to bring a luster back to it, or will doing the shoe polish how the luster is, or should I go back over it with a semi-gloss child-proof finish? How would I do that process?
Okay. Well, first of all, you bring up a good subject matter. Everything that's on the shelf here that's finishing materials, everything on the shelf that you can buy off the shelves is all non-toxic when it's dry. So, like for instance, if you see salad bowl finish, and it says non-toxic when it's dry, and it costs $25 for a pint or a quart. It's nothing more than just plain varnish, because everything is non-toxic. That's just the way to market things to make you spend more money on a product that is no different from any other oil-based product on the shelf. They're all basically the same thing. Like for instance, well, let's take a can of varnish. You have a quart of varnish here. If you add 25% mineral spirits to a quart of varnish, that gives you white bone varnish. But you see two cans, varnish and white bone varnish. So 25% mineral spirits gives you white bone varnish. If you thin your varnish 50-50, that gives you white coat Danish oil, all those penetrating oil finishes that soak into the wood and wipe off the excess. That's what that is, 50-50. And 75-25 is wood conditioner. You see all these products on the shelf in individual cans, and they're all the same product, just more mineral spirits to the can. They all dry the same way, it's all the same products. All they're doing is getting your money for mineral spirits. As far as what you're telling me, clean it up real good with Gojo. If you see scratches that are white, that look white, that means the scratches haven't finished itself. And usually old ink and scratch cover polish will make that go back to the original color. If the color of the scratch is the color of the wood, then you know your scratch is all the way down to the wood surface. And that has to be treated different. Some more finish over top of it after you sand it. If the finish is in viable condition, after you clean it and all that, you could probably just, let's just say the finish is overall in pretty good shape, then I would just wax it. That's all you need. And they need to wax it so on. I just had 2 great kids, so. Well, I personally didn't have. But anyway.
You were talking about stripping earlier, and there's a lot of push to get away from methylene chloride strippers. Is that, what are you using now?
Well, since we do this for a living, we still use methylene chloride-based strippers. And
They work better still?
dramatically.
Okay.
You talking about the citrus strippers and things
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Well, I've tested those things before they came on the market. I think in the late 90s, I was called to participate in testing things like that. And as far as my profession goes, we wouldn't touch the stuff because what would take that product 8 hours to do, we can do in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
With chemical strippers.
That's right.
Yeah, methylene chloride is methylene chloride-based strippers. They're safe to use if you just use them right. You know, methylene chloride has been associated with cancer, but I mean, if you throw a rat in a bowl with, you know, a few gallons of stripper and let him sit there for a few hours, he's going to absorb something. I mean, the way they test these things is just outrageous. To absorb everything that they say that you would have to become toxic in your systems, you would have to sit there and just breathe stuff all day long. You know, it's ridiculous.
I'm a chemist at CDC, and they've tried for years and years and years to do away with it, but nothing works better for extracting compounds off of solid bases. And I'm telling you, there might be a cancer link, but it is so slight they really can't prove it.
Right, and now they're trying to push it off the market again. And thank God for me, I'm 64, so next year I can kind of start retiring, and if they do push it off the market, I'm gone.
Yeah.
While we're on that subject, what do you use in your shop for exhaust so that you don't breathe in all these fumes?
The stripper?
Whatever you're using.
Okay, well, when we do stripping, it's all outside. We have a canopy set up on the deck and all this, and all of our stripping is done outside, so we have nothing but fresh air. And stripping, the solvents that evaporate from that are heavier than air, so they go down to the floor anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not, you know, if you stick your head in the tank, you're going to smell it. But normally, our tank is a little bit lower than this, so we're stripping things. And, you know, if you start to get any lightheadedness at all, just go in some fresh air and you're done. You're good. The biggest thing about strippers, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, right, is that methylene chloride, when you absorb it through your lungs, through your skin, it metabolizes and becomes carbon monoxide in your blood. And that can cause heart attacks if you have heart problems, things like that. You do not want to be using methylene chloride strippers because that's the danger of methylene chloride. And methylene chloride is integral. For instance, if you have a lacquer finish, strippers usually contain methylene chloride, acetone, which melts lacquer, fingernail polish, remove your acetone, and alcohol, which melts shellac, right? So, and then it has some waxes in it to keep it from evaporating too fast. So, when you're stripping a piece of furniture, it's either the acetone, alcohol, or the methylene chloride that's actually taking the finish off. And the way you can tell if it's an oil finish versus a lacquer or shellac finish is when you put the stripper on the piece, the finish will kind of like wrinkle up. If you've ever seen that before, you can kind of scrape off big chunks of it at one time. That's a varnish finish. And that happens because the methylene chloride, when it evaporates, creates heat. And that heat makes the finish expand and let go of the wood so you can just kind of like take it off in sheets. That's how the methylene chloride works. And if it's a lacquer finish, your lacquer thinner takes the finish off. And if it's a shellac finish, then the lacquer thinner and the alcohol takes the finish off. So that's how the strippers work.
I had a Furniture Medic franchise for a few years, about 8 years, and what they use is a water-based stripper, and it actually works really well.
Water-based is caustic soda?
I'm not sure what it was.
It had to be a lot. It had to be a sodium hydroxide or something.
I'd be more worried about that.
Yeah, I'd be much more worried about using that type of stripper.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, because there was no odor or anything. I actually did jobs on site because there was no odor to it.
Yeah, I don't think that lye has a very strong odor to it. I mean, in college, my first job was working at an antique guy's place, and we would, he had these tanks that he would, hit fire under them, you know, natural gas, and he'd turn them on in the afternoon, and the next morning it would be boiling hot. And we would strip at that, and that was a lie bath. Man, it got your hands super clean. I mean, you had dirty hands, that's the thing. But we would take old doors that had lead-based paint on them. Anything previous to '74, paint is lead-based paint, so you want to treat that right. And back then, they weren't concerned with that. So they would take these doors or wainscoting or whatever out of old houses that's got lead-based paint on them and stick them in there, and we put cinder blocks to hold them down. And within 2 or 3 minutes, you could take out 3 doors in that boiling muck, and they would be just clean as a whistle. I mean, you know, so with your hands, but that's the way we used to do it. And this guy bought a French desk that had marquetry all over it and wanted to strip it. And Otis told him, this guy named Otis Daughtry, he told him what it was a hot lye bath. He says, well, will I take the finish off? And I said, yeah, I'll take the finish off.
Anything else is on there?
Well, he put it in there and put a cinder block on top of it. Within seconds, the veneer was just bubbling up to the top. Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
I didn't do that. He did that. I had nothing to do with that. It was kind of fun. Anyway.
What about the soy gel?
That's what we tested, and it works, but you know, we're in the business to make money. We can't wait 8 or 9 hours for the strip of spend on the chair.
I use it because I was indoor stripping off the old wood in the kitchen, and you know, you're indoors and it was winter time, and that's, you know.
Well, you have to do what you have to do. And that's, you know, the safe stripper is safe strip. You can use it in confined areas, and kids can walk by and heat it and it won't hurt them and things like that unless they're taking off that next paint. But as far as the industry goes, what we do, it's so ineffective that we just ignore things like that.
What about removing milk paint?
Milk paint?
Old milk paint,
All
like
right.
in the 50s.
Now there's a trick right there, because you can fight with that stuff forever, but all you have to do is use warm vinegar, and you'll see it just melt right off. Warm vinegar is the only thing that will take milk paint off, and that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. You can just soak it in stripper for days. Nothing. I mean nothing. Vinegar, there it goes. Just amazing. Milk paint is an amazing thing.
It's kind of like a sore spot.
I'm sorry.
I have some antique, you know, wrought iron outside furniture that's been painted that I want to strip off. It's probably lead paint, but what's a good way to get that off?
Sandblast it.
Yeah.
Sandblast it. Don't even try to strip it, just sandblast it. Because it's probably, if the original finish is there, it'll be a baked on enamel finish. That'll be really hard to get off. So sandblasting is what you want to do. If it's anodized aluminum.
No, it's wrought iron.
All right,
So it's extra heavy.
If it's real iron, then more, you like the real thick stuff?
Oh yeah.
That's cast iron, sure, that had enamel on it, and it's probably lead-based enamel, so you want to sandblast that off. Much more efficient, believe me, sandblast, don't even play with it, because you'll waste a lot of time. Just sandblast.
Well, I know.
You've wasted enough time already. Okay, there you go. Good.
I'm actually kind of glad for guys like you, because I absolutely hate refinishing stuff. But I want to have your opinion about, say you want to build something that you want to stand the test of time. You just want this to be your signature piece. What kind of finish would you put on a piece now that you want to be an antique 100 years from now? Would you use the most modern things, or would you stay with, you know, what the masters, you know?
Well, first of all, you know, what is the function of the piece to begin with?
Okay, say you're going to build a piece of furniture, drawers.
Chest of drawers.
Chest of drawers.
Okay.
Let's just use that as an example.
All right. Well, if it was just a standard old chest of drawers and nobody's going to be setting pizzas on top of it and cold drinks and all that, then you don't have to use quite as the durable finish as you would use on a kitchen table. So kind of like you have to determine what finish you want to put on. You have lots of options if it's not going to be used for anymore. Okay? So, I mean, if I were building it, I would French polish it for sure. That's what I would do. But that's, if you don't know how to French polish it, you can make quite a mess with it. But on the other hand, you could brush on several coats of shellac and wet sand it back and then polish that. It's beautiful. So you can use shellac, you can use lacquer, you can use varnish. You can use anything you want to use. It's personal preference.
Yeah.
The one thing that I see...
What stands the test of time better, though?
Which one stands the test of time? Okay, what environment is it going to be in? For instance, if you have a brand new dining room table that you buy today, and it's in an air-conditioned environment where the mean temperature is 70 degrees, that means you have minimal wood movement. That means your finish is going to last dramatically longer because it's not cracking and allowing moisture through it, so the wood absorbs the moisture and expands and makes the finish let go. So in our environments that we have air conditioning, so the finishes that you put on there, all of them will probably last the same amount of time if the piece is in the same environment all the time. Like in the antique business, the pieces that come from the north, the cold sticks, they're always in dramatically better shape than the finishes from the south. You know, that also goes for the glue joints and everything. The veneers are always in better shape because they move less. Cold will not hurt you. Heat will kill you when it comes to furniture finishes. Cold is not your enemy. Heat is your enemy. Expansion.
Let's go over to Marcus's horse there for a minute.
Okay.
He, I don't know if you were listening, but I picked up on something that Marcus said there. He was a little afraid to put much of a finish on there.
Fearing that it would turn colors. Amber with age or something like that?
I'm not sure, but from raw wood, what would your preference be for putting any type of finish on there?
What I would do, cedar turns darker with age. Light woods tend to turn darker with age, and dark woods tend to turn lighter with age. And you know, there's like cedar kind of like in the middle of darkness and lightness, so to speak. But cedar definitely darkens with age, and the other is holly, isn't it?
Aspen.
Aspen.
Oh, aspen. Okay, that's fairly soft. All right, so that's going to darken with age a little bit. But as far as keeping it true to the way it looks, what we would do with it, we would seal it with acrylic lacquer. Acrylic lacquer is what we call water white lacquer. It doesn't yellow with age at all. So the finish itself will not change the color of it. And that's what acrylic lacquer was developed for cars. 57 Chevy had the first metal plate paint job on it. That was the first time you ever saw metal plate paint jobs. And that was the development of acrylic modified lacquers. So they didn't last very long in the automotive industry because the reflective quality of the materials they used for the metal plate deteriorated the paint. They heated it up. So that's why you saw the old 57 Chevy metal plate fade so fast, so they stopped using it. And also they developed catalyzed urethanes, two-part finishes.
I did spray a sanding seal on there before.
Lacquer sanding seal? What did you mentioned depth?
Yeah.
That's a good product, although that will yellow with age. Okay. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, but it will yellow with age. It'll oxidize. But a varnish would be a dramatic effect. That would really change the color of each varnish. When you up the can of varnish, you can see it's very amber, very deep amber color. So that's going to impart color on whatever you put it on. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So your preference would be like a
clear acrylic lacquer.
Water-based?
No, lacquer-based, solvent-based lacquer.
Okay.
Solvent-based lacquer. And the acrylic is what would keep it from being yellow. Like I said, they call it water white. And that's what all your brasses are colored with. I mean, they're coated with acrylic lacquers, and they bake it. And the brasses won't tarnish because of the lacquer, and it stays very clear.
Does that stuff take a long time to dry?
No, it dries as fast as, it's just like, all lacquers dry super fast. In the right environment.
Actually, you want to slow it down sometimes.
Yeah, in the summertime, we use retardants to slow down the action. In the wintertime, we use a hotter thinner. Actually, an automotive thinner to speed up the process, the temperature.
Is there anything written that kind of tells you what finish to put on wood, or is that just something you have to learn?
No, it's just a personal preference. You know, like for instance, traditionally since about 1920, the manufacturers, the industries used nothing but nitrocellulose lacquer, cellulose nitrate. And that was the result of gun cotton manufacture from World War I, and they discovered lacquer as a finish. And they started using it as an insulator and all kinds of things in manufacturing, and they figured, well, this will look good on wood too. So that's where the lacquer finishes came from, was from the war effort in World War I. And that was one of the byproducts.
Guitar finishers love them too.
Oh yeah, because, you know, like usually classical guitar and all string guitars are finished in shellac. And your acoustic guitars, steel strings are all finished in lacquers. Some of them are finished in shellac, but not very much. It's a difference in the tonality of it. I play guitar, so.
It's actually a collector's actually look for that cracking.
Yes.
Some of the older guitars.
Well, if it's a steel string guitar, that's just the natural movement of the wood. It's not cracky, elongated cracks, and I got a nice Gibson that's really cracked.
They look for that.
Yeah, well, that's.
They want it, I
that's
don't know
not
how
me.
much and all that.
Is it better to spray on these finishes or brush them on?
It's much more efficient to spray on finishes. Plus, if you brush something, for instance, if you dip your brush in a can of water and you do this stroke here, then you do this stroke here, this is going to have more finish than this right here. In other words, you don't get a consistent finish using your brush just for that very fact. Like one of the things that we do, if we're doing a large surface and just say latex paint, we tip it and we roll it out with a sponge roller, and you put pressure on the roller so you can roll that paint out as far as you can to get as thin a cut on there as possible. And to get rid of the rolling marks, you take a dry brush and hold it perpendicular and just go across it very gently and get those out and wipe your brush off from time to time. And you let that dry and do that a couple of times, you'll be surprised at how pretty that finish is because you've taken away, there's no brush marks on it. And on a piece of scrap, if you try that, you'll be surprised at how good it looks. And then you can do varnish the same way. You can roll on your varnish and tip it with a dry brush. And that gets your bubbles out and all that. And you don't have these brush marks in it.
Wow.
One more question. I'm sorry. Like I've got a piece of furniture that you want to match the finish on, how would I tell?
How do you do that?
Yeah, how would you tell what was used on that other piece of furniture so you kind of match the furniture?
Well, that would come from years of experience of looking at things. And the way, like for instance, if we have a mahogany chest of drawers made in the 50s, it's going to be faded because reds fade first, so everything fades. And we had to make the top drawer, so we'd make the drawer and all that. How would we color this to match everything else is what you're asking me, right? All right, the way we would do it is we would first put a background color into the wood. When you look at mahogany, just raw mahogany, nicely sanded mahogany in bright light, and you turn it, you move it around, you see it shimmer. You see this depth in it that's really pretty. Now that color you see is pretty much a golden yellow or a golden color background, right? Everybody agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you see that golden background, you see that in walnut too. Satin wood has that golden background. All these woods that have that golden background, we start with golden oak or Puritan pine. Those are two Minwax colors that have no pigment in the bottom of the can. They're just nothing but oil and oil dye, okay, with a little bit of a binder. So we know if we put that on the wood, it will not do anything but just brighten the background with it. And it won't cover any part of the wood itself because there's no pigments in it. So any type of stain that you have to stir from pigments in it, those are just thin paints, right? Because if you put on, say you have special walnut, if you put on 3 or 4 coats of special walnut, you've painted your piece of furniture the color of that stain because the pigments in it collect over time, so you painted the piece of furniture actually. But on the other hand, when you use a dye, dyes are always clear. So like for instance, if everybody knows what a Coca-Cola is, if you put a Coca-Cola up in the sunlight, you can see the sun coming through it. You can see the light coming through it. But it's virtually black when you look at it here, and you put it up in the sun, you can see through it. So that means that it's got dyes in it, but they're clear. You can see through them with light in the background. With pigments, you can't see through it. That's opaque. So the furniture builders the people that make fine furniture with highly figured woods, there's no reason to put any color on it at all, simply because the wood speaks for itself. If I make a really pretty mahogany table, mahogany naturally looks beautiful. If you want to enhance it, mahogany's on the red side of wood, so you would add some type of red dye to it to richen it up, or potassium dichromate or ferrous sulfate or some chemical to react with it to make it, to change the color. But that's something that you guys have to determine which way you want to go with your pieces after you build them. I can tell you, I'm one of the speakers at the AWFS this year in Las Vegas. And I might have to be one of the judges for the furniture exhibitions there. And what we see all the time, beautiful work, absolutely stunning carpentry or millwork, whatever, just beautiful pieces of furniture, inlaid, all this stuff. But what they don't have is a good finish on it. So you really can't see the true beauty of your work because everything looks kind of like lifeless and dull. Because people that build fine things like that are afraid they're going to hurt it by finding the finish on it. And that's the thing, what if I mess up? I messed up the whole piece and I worked so long on it, So like, how many of you guys have spent 6 months building a piece of furniture?
Not 6 months.
But some of you have. Or a year, it takes a long time to build something perfect. So you build this beautiful Rolls Royce of a piece of furniture and you paint it with paintbrush. You don't want to do that,
I can tell you that's the scariest part of what we do.
What's
To
that?
me, it's the scariest part,
It's finishing.
is finishing.
Right.
I can handle the woodworking.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit of a mystery sometimes how I want to handle the wood because wood is so variable. Even oaks, like I use a lot of sawmill lumber, and I really don't know how to identify the different types of oak, but there's several types of oak even around here.
White and
And
red.
some of them are lighter and some of them are darker. And it's hard to decide other than using oil-based stains, which is, the easy way out.
I see, but you're painting it.
I know I am.
When you say paint, when you say
It's
stain,
hard
you're
to-
painting.
I am beginning to start to use dyes. It's trying to do a little bit something different. I don't really want to cover it. I want to try to enhance the color and even it out.
Okay, getting back to this fellow over here, the chest of drawers that we made a drawer for, and we know the red mahogany over here is faded some. What we do is we'll put that golden color in the background because that's the same thing that's happening over here. You can see the golden background. We'll seal that up, and then when it comes time to start lacquering it, we'll add the color that's on the other side. We'll add that dye into the finish and spray on that down in very, very thin coats and build the finish up to where we match it virtually perfect by very, very faint layers of color in the finish. And that's called shading. Okay, does that make sense? I mean, we can, if you know how to do it, it's pretty easy, but if you don't know how to do it, you can buy 1,000 stains and nothing's going to work because you have to be able to mimic the way it was done before, and by shading it with lacquers and not touching the surface with a brush or anything, you can pretty much, it would be something really tough for us not to be able to match it, just with using dyes and the finish itself. That's the way we do it.
You said golden, where do you get the golden from?
Golden oak, Puritan pine, there's a midwax.
It's midwax.
It's midwax, yeah.
Okay.
But everything else that they make is pretty much got pigments in it, so you know you're buying paint, right?
What would you use in a dye? Just golden oak dye? Or?
Well, you mean like just dry powders?
Yeah.
I just look at the color chart and get the brightest yellow, golden yellow I can find.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try that.
And water-based dyes are the most light fast and give you the most brilliant colors because they penetrate so good. Alcohol-based dyes are the next best. Oil-based dyes are the worst because they fade the fastest and they also bleed through finishes. If you've ever had bleeding, I've replaced carpet in the living room before because I didn't know that back in the old days.
I did learn something with dyes recently. With oak, I don't like using with oak because it has such an open grain and you can see the little white flecks in there if you don't get it good.
You don't, yeah.
But if you go several shades lighter than you really want and do it several times, it eventually soaks into those little holes.
Right, but see, you can do it several times, so we do that with a spray gun, several times with the dye.
With the dye?
With the dye, yeah.
And it works?
Well, remember I said to match this mahogany drawer, we add color to the finish and spray it on. And that's how we build the color up.
Like a airbrush or actual?
A spray gun.
Really?
You guys need to take my finishing classes, come on. And I would suggest you start with Finishing 101. I explained the 4 types of finishing materials, how you can use them all together and integrate all these finishing systems. You can use every finishing system over top of the other one, if you know how to do it. And what the finishing systems are and what the colors are. And I demonstrate things in the shop. I do a 2-day class at my shop where I actually restore a piece of furniture over 2 days, showing you all the techniques that you want to see. And I get this all the time in these classes. It just can't be that easy. It just can't be that easy.
Sure, yeah, sure.
It's easy. 35 years of experience, it's very easy. But at the same time, it's like French polishing. You could read 100 books on French polishing. It's like riding a bicycle. If you've never gotten on a bicycle and just read about it, you're never going to ride a bicycle. Now, like French polishing is like, you can read about it all you want, but unless you have somebody that really knows how to do it, to show you, to guide you how to make the pad and how to apply the finish and all this, it's virtually impossible to get it right. And when I teach a French polishing class, and people are amazed at the results they get with just an hour of instruction. And that gets the ball rolling, so you know exactly how to use the product itself and what the limitations are. And it's a beautiful finish, and you can use it over any finish, except for wax.
Let's say you had to use a brush and brush on your finish, the lacquers or polyurethane. What type of brush do you recommend? What kind of bristle?
Just natural bristle for anything. I mean, latex paints you can use, synthetic brushes and all that. I mean, you can use any type of brush you want to. I think the most, like we don't brush on finishes. We either roll them on or spray them on. So if we're rolling, we just tip that. Brushing is very effective, especially for large surfaces. But if you're forced to, just I would use just a real good natural brush and brush, because those you can clean. Does anybody know how to clean a paintbrush after you've used it with varnishing or anything like that? Any methods?
We clean them, I don't know if it's right way.
I learned this in high school in my 8th grade. I still have my 8th grade project as a matter of fact. I'm very proud of that claim. It's over my desk. The way you clean a paintbrush after you've used it in varnish or paint, whatever, is lacquer thinner is your universal cleaner, paint cleaner, your brush cleaner. When you go about brush cleaner, it's lacquer thinner. That's all it is. Because lacquer thinner contains alcohol, which is good for shellac if you brushed it. It contains acetone for lacquer, and it contains xylene and toluene, and that's good for oil-based finishes. Okay, so you dip your brush in brush cleaner, which is lacquer thinner. After you've done that, you go to your sink or go outside so your wife doesn't kill you, and you have just a bar soap, any bar soap you want, and just constantly wet that brush and rub it on the soap and squeeze out the soap. And that soap will get whiter and whiter and whiter. Every time you rinse it out and do it again, it gets whiter and whiter. The trick is to keep on doing it until when you squeeze that out, you don't see a line on the top of that soap. If you see a line of discoloration, you know there's still finish in the bottom of that brush. You keep on washing it until you don't see anything but nice white suds. Once you get to the nice white suds, you've got a clean brush. It's ready for, you know. If you do that every time, a brush will last virtually forever. You got to clean it to where the soap is snow white. Once you've achieved that, the brush is great. It just cleans it.
You didn't have HBO Kelly as your 8th grade instructor, did you?
HBO Kelly? No. I had, the teacher we had was, we called him Bucky Landers because he had buck teeth. You know how kids are cruel. Bucky.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's what we call him, Bucky Landers. He's a great teacher, good teacher.
Krylon makes a spray can product called clear acrylic. Is that the same as your clear acrylic lacquer?
No, it's acrylic, that's acrylic, water-based acrylic. Speaking of acrylics, when you buy like aquaphane or these water-based acrylic finishes, you know,
their spray can are water-based?
Yeah, their spray cans are water-based.
Oh,
when you buy those, if you've ever been to an art supply store, you may have seen acrylic medium in a tub. And it's just like a gel. But if you take acrylic paint, you can extend it. These are extenders. You can mix that when you paint and make more paint, so to speak. But that acrylic extender is your acrylic finish. Like for instance, when you go to the museum and look at these paintings, they all got this really shiny coating on them. You know, that's called over varnishing to keep the oil that's there, keep it all together in one space so you can see the painting. If you don't over varnish the paintings, they'll just fall off the canvas. So you reline the back with wax and that sticks the paint to it, and you over varnish it to keep the paint all intact, like you're gluing it all together on the canvas. Because if you don't do that, we all see old oil paintings and they just fall off the canvas. That's because the varnish or linseed oil they use for the pigments to mix it up, the medium, the binder, continues to cross-link until it turns back into just good old dirt. And so the dirt just falls off the canvas. Because the pigment's back to protons.
And if you're trying to fill the pores on an oak like, or a wood like oak or mahogany, can you fill them with heavier coats of your finish, or should you use a grain fill?
You should always use your grain filler. Because if, like, a lot of people make the mistake in our business, they use sanding sealer and keep on putting it on coats and then they cut it back until they get a smooth enough surface where they can start lacquering over top of it.
That's me.
Huh?
That's me.
So when you do that, what you're doing is by building up that sanding sealer, you actually make the finish very, very soft, because sanding sealers are very soft. And they're only designed to be used once. You seal up the wood, you're done. Then you start doing your lacquers, or your varnish top coats, whatever. You should not use sanding sealer to build a finish because it's too soft. It's not designed for that.
To continue on the wood color thing, what brands of product would you recommend?
Well, is Bartley still on the market?
As far as I know.
Bartley gel stains, they make a really good filler, and it tells your own can how to use it.
It's clear?
Yeah, well, you can buy it in colors. You can add your own, you can take oil pigments and add colors to it too.
It's called Bartley?
Bartley. Bartley gel stains, Bartley wood fillers.
Didn't they sell?
Huh?
I use the Bartley gel stain for Natasha.
Yeah. Bartley's, we find Bartley gel stains, I mean, we don't use those type of products, but I've seen the results of other people using them, and they're good. It's a good product. Their fillers work real well, but there's another filler on the market that Rockler sells called Crystal Lac. And it's Crystal Lac. And it's a water-based wood filler. After you sealed up your wood one time, that's when you should use wood fillers after your first coat of sealant. Because if you do the wood filling right, after you sand that smooth with real fine safety like 600 paper, you've got almost a mirror smooth finish right there. So Crystal Lac is the water-based filler that we use, and you can apply that twice in one day. The next day, sand it back, and you're ready to go. Crystal Lac looks fantastic.
With the quality gel stain, would you put any type of coating or something on top of that?
Here again, that's personal preference. Like, people ask me all the time, how many coats of finish should I put on my project? And I say as many as you want. Because there's no definitive answer. If you're finishing maple and you're finishing pine, pine's going to take more finish to get a nice finish on it because it's so soft it's going to suck it in. But if you're doing maple, it takes less finish because the wood's so hard. So this is what I always say. Get your piece of scrap of whatever you're finishing and finish it first. When you're satisfied with that, now you know what to do with your piece. So always do your finishing on scraps first. That way you don't make a mistake by putting on the stain on your beautiful bird's eye maple. Oh my God, look at that, it looks horrible. I ruined my piece of furniture. So don't practice on your piece, practice on scraps.
I have a question about mahogany and a question about teak.
Okay.
I have a boat, and I have a lot of exposed teak that's exposed to the elements all the time, okay, 24/7. And they tend to flake after a while. And I want to think about refinishing some of the stuff. I know that the antique boats probably have the same problems. A lot of boats are made out of mahogany and stuff like that. They don't tend to flake. Is there any, short of just pulling everything off, sanding it back down to this natural, and then refinishing with some kind of a teak oil? Is there anything else?
There's no such thing as teak oil. That's just varnish in a can. They call it teak oil.
Is that like
okay, let's just be realistic here. How much teak would they have to squeeze the oil out of to give you a can of teak oil this big? How many tongue nuts would they have to squeeze to give you all the tongue oil this big? When you think about logically, and lemon oil, for instance, okay, they're not going to squeeze 1,000 lemons to give you lemon oil. There's no such thing. So it's marketing and trying to get you to spend more money on things. That's what everything you see on the shelf. That's if you, once again, if you took Finishing 101, you would know exactly what you're looking at on the shelves and how much misinformation is on the label itself. For instance, used in well-ventilated area. What does that mean to you?
Well-ventilated to me?
What does it mean? What do you think?
Not my shop, that's for sure. I mean,
Okay, so in other words, to save your lungs and to save your health and all this, use in a well-ventilated area, right? Say again?
Volatile organic.
Used in a well-ventilated area. Right. But that's not really what they're telling you. What that really means is that if you don't have air movement in the room you're using this product in, it won't dry. Isn't that true? If you varnish, like you varnish the top right here and turn off the air conditioner, so let it sit here, it'll stay tacky for 2 weeks. You put a fan blowing that little fan blowing that way, it'll be dry in 8 hours. So air movement is paramount to all finishes drying. That's the way they dry. Okay? So if you don't have air movement, adequate ventilation, the finish is not going to dry. So by just putting that on the label, that makes you think this is about my lungs. So you come back and the product's not drying. Honey, something must be wrong with the can of varnish we bought. It won't dry. Let's go buy some more. And while we're at it, let's buy some strippers. Strip this off. See, so believe me, this is America. We know that marketing is everything, okay? And the way they label things is just the way to get your money. Especially when it comes to oil-based products, they're basically all the same thing. There's no new miracle resins on the shelf for us to use. If there were, you would see urethanes out here, 2-part conversion varnishes and all this kind of stuff. That's not for the end user, for us. That's not for the type of use that we use it for.
So no honor among thieves, right?
No honor among thieves. And I get this all the time. Is this a good piece of furniture? So when it comes to buying furniture, buyer beware. Everything made probably in the last 20 years is paper, veneered paper.
Yeah. When we talk about a catalyzed lacquer, really what is that?
A catalyzed lacquer is just a regular nitrocellulose based lacquer, but they put an acid kicker. In other words, just like 2-part urethane finishes, they dry by catalyzation. Catalyzed lacquers is the same thing. It's just an additive, an acid additive they add to it to make it dry faster.
So it dries faster,
Just
doesn't
dries
cure
faster.
harder or any differently?
Well, see,
dries
just by
faster.
drying faster, that means it cures harder. It cures faster and cures harder because it has a kicker in there. I would say a regular nitrocellulose film versus a catalyzed film. This is 3 months old and this is a month old. This would be as hard as this over here. It's just a matter of time. And catalyzed finishes were developed for the industry to pump out furniture super fast. And it was developed for kitchen cabinets first, wet areas. Actually, acrylic lacquers were developed for kitchen cabinets and wet areas first. That was developed in the 50s. And here we have catalyzed lacquers, which are just like another step above that for durability and all that kind of stuff. So that's where catalyzed lacquers came in.
Okay.
Now they're using...
Lacquer will, like if you put a sweaty glass on a lacquer finish, it'll leave a mark.
Why?
Because of the moisture, I guess. I mean,
because the finish is cracked, allowing the moisture to come from the glass down into the finish, and that creates a white ring. The moisture evaporates in the finish because it's, looks like a sponge. So the moisture gets trapped, and when it evaporates, you see the white ring. That's evaporation. If you catch it immediately, you can take an air dryer and just gently heat the area. You can expand the finish, and the ring will just disappear right in front of you. Or if that doesn't work, put mayonnaise on it for 24 hours. If that doesn't work, try Vaseline. These are oils. And just having oil constantly contact the finish may soften it just enough to make it disappear. Vaseline seems to work real well for things like that.
These gentlemen brought up wood boats, and I was hesitant to mention wood boats, but I have got a older wood boat that's mahogany, and I'm embarrassed to say it was stored out in the weather, and the finish is completely dead on it and just flaking off. And I had a gentleman talk to me about refinishing, and he talked about sanding back and then using an epoxy, almost like a fiberglass epoxy without the fiberglass as a first coat, and letting that absorb into the wood and then varnishing over that.
No. Well, he doesn't, that guy's not going to refinish that boat in the future by doing that to it.
Yeah.
No. When you're doing finishing on anything that you want to last a long time, you're going to have to be able to find a way to refinish it, but epoxy into the pores is not, that's just no. Use a product called boat coat. There's a varnish. Exterior varnishes are what we call long oil varnishes. That means they have a bunch more plasticizers in them to allow them to stretch and shrink with temperature far longer because they're exposed to the elements outside, so they deteriorate slower, much slower. Interior varnishes like polyurethane are short oil varnishes, and they dry real fast, and so they're not designed to be used outside. Long oil varnishes are designed to be used outside in the weather, and old varnishes for boats, they were just long oil varnishes. And from what I understand, the best one on the market right now, what I understand, is a product called boat coat. You can Google that. I'm sure you can find it somewhere in Atlanta. Boat coat is for boats. It's exactly what it's for.
Jamestown Marina sells it.
Huh?
Jamestown Marina sells it.
They sell it, yeah.
And Rhode Island.
Boat coat, it's a great product. As far as refinishing a boat goes, the first shop I had down in Buckhead a long time ago, I was sharing a space with this guy that actually did mahogany boats. What are the Chris Crafts? He had bunches of Chris Crafts on it. Everybody's used an electric planer, I assume, for your bottom of your doors or whatever. He was using one of those to plane the boats, to plane the finish off. So he was taking very small amounts of wood off. And that's the way he stripped the boat. He would take one of those and just each board. When he got done, the overlap, he would do that with the stripper. All right, and so the boats looked brand new when he was done with it. They just looked fantastic. He did them inside and out. And all he used was just plain old long oil varnish on. Because a couple of years later, you're going to have to take the boat out and redo it anyway. It's just, nothing's going to hold up to that. But once that, once that finish gets really hard, it's probably going to take about 1.5 years or 2 years, then it's going to start cracking. When it starts cracking, wood gets into that, water gets into that wood, expands, and the finish fall off. That's why mahogany boats have to be maintained just like a mahogany door. It's all about exposure. There's nothing magic about finishing. There's no magic products out there that's just going to instantly do what you want it to do. Like if you have a piece of pine, you want to make this piece of pine look like mahogany, let's say. So the way I teach coloring wood is you have a triangle process. You have the color of the wood, and here's the color you're after. So what color do you add to this to make that? So the first thing that we all do, the first mistake I think, is that we don't take into consideration that the wood is a color itself. So this color plus what color makes this color. So that's the secret to it, learning how to color wood. You've got to figure out which color to add to the wood color to make this color. If you buy a can of red mahogany and put it on a piece of pine, does it look like red mahogany to you? Looks like red pine. Doesn't look like nothing like mahogany. So you can see your dilemma. Unfortunately, there's no magic. It's just it's not trial and error, but constant experience is how you get really good at finishing. And finishing is not hard to do. If you don't know how, but if somebody shows you these processes, then you get it real fast. If you experiment with these things on your own, like I did for the first 5 years of my business, you know, it's a very frustrating process. I mean, I made lots of mistakes and learned from many mistakes, but there's no magic to it at all. It's just elbows.
One last question, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Back to the catalyzed lacquer for a minute. Is there any special consideration for storage and cleanup?
Lacquer thinner cleanup. Lacquer thinner is the thinner from catalyzed lacquers.
Okay. Somewhere or another, I got the notion that with the catalyzed lacquer, you got to clean the gun like real soon after.
I understand. Now, there's two different types of catalyzed finishes. There's pre-catalyzed finishes and post-catalyzed finishes. The pre-catalyzed finishes are already catalyzed in the can when you buy it. So that product itself will last probably, stay fresh probably for about a year in the can. And you can leave it in your spray gun because once you spray, you know, just pull the trigger, that lacquer is going to melt anything that's dry in the whole line right there. So it just, you know, that's not a problem. Post-catalyzed finishes, you have what you call a pot life. And that means that you have to spray what's in that pot within a certain amount of time, or it's going to get hard and your gun's ruined. So post-catalyzed lacquers are industrial lacquers. Post-catalyzed varnishes and all that. That's more of an industrial thing, like you would do scientific maple tables with a post-catalyzed lacquer or varnish. Extremely durable and all that, but it takes a very specific environment to do that in. In other words, I just spent $17,000 on a spray gun. That's the type of environment you need to do a lot of this stuff.
Is that what they use, a certain type of light to finish the drying process?
UV, you're talking about UV light. Yeah, that's where you see the production line. Usually it's something about 25 or 30 feet long. The wood comes in, it's sprayed with the HVLP tip, high volume, low pressure. And then once it gets down here, it's going through the light. By the time it gets in, it's completely cured. It's just like when you go to the dentist, they do a filling and they put the blue line on there, they're just cured.
You know, if you spray too much pre-cat lacquer on that, it doesn't like it.
On what? Your teeth?
On UV. Just in case you haven't ever tried that, it's not a good plan.
No. Now, that brings up a good point there. Catalyzed lacquers are developed to be self-sealing finishes. Anything that's catalyzed, you're not required to use a sealer below it. It will self-seal itself. So there's no requirement to buy lacquer sanding sealer. But if you did buy that, use it in a catalyzed lacquer, the finish is going to fail because the catalyzed lacquer is going to get harder than the sealer and it's going to crawl. It will crawl. And if you put it over shellac, it crawls big time. It looks like the parched desert. It just looks horrible. So you have to use, self-sealing finishes can only be used over themselves.
In the depth lacquer that we use on these things, the can that has the satin, for example, you shake it, it has a marble in it.
Yeah.
The gloss does not.
Right.
And we've been told by someone that we should use the gloss on there first, and then the finish, whatever we're going to use for the finish later, because it said it fills the pores better. Is that true?
To a certain extent, but what's actually going on there is that you want to use clear gloss finishing material to do your finishing in your last coat, your final sheen. That's when you put on your satin coat.
No, well, the final sheen is going to be satin.
Right. So use that last.
Use that last.
Yeah.
But should we use the, after we use the sealer, should we use the gloss before we put the final coat on?
Yeah.
Why, does it give you a better cover?
Well, what it is if you build your finish with satin only, it gets foggier and foggier and foggier. Because the way they make finishes satin or semi-gloss is they add glass to the finish. Pulverized glass, it's like coffee powder, okay? It's called flattening agent. So they add flattening agent to the lacquers, So when you spray them on, that glass actually floats to the top. And if you look at it under magnification, it looks like if you walk on it, it would just cut your feet all to pieces because it's little tiny shards of glass that are very sharp. So when light hits that those shards, it diffuses the light and gives you that satiny look, right? If you don't use satin finish, the finish itself has no glass in it, so it's always crystal clear and dramatically enhances what's below it. Shellacs are dramatic on wood, and lacquers are almost as good as shellacs as far as intensifying the colors and all this. But if you use a satin finish to build your finish with, it's just going to get foggier and foggier and foggier. So you have to use clear finish to build with, and then use your final coat to adjust your sheen.
Thank you. I was actually told by someone who's done it all his life that high gloss is a harder finish.
It is a harder finish simply because you're not displacing the resin with flattening agent.
Yeah.
Okay? So anytime you use a satin finish, it's not going to be as durable as a gloss finish for that very reason.
That makes sense.
Now here's another trick about satin finishes. If you've ever spilt something on a satin finish in your house and you've rubbed that one spot, and all of a sudden you get a shiny spot, it's like a headlight looking at you. How do you make that satin again? And you should know the answer to this.
What?
If you rub a satin finish hard enough, you will create a bright spot. It will look very bright compared to the rest of it. In other words, what you've actually done is polished that area.
Right.
You've leveled the glass, so to speak. So you got a level field there. That means that's going to reflect more light and not diffuse it than the rest of the surface. So you have this satin finish, and then all of a sudden you have this bright spot because you've rubbed that spot and you smoothed out the glass, so to speak. So like for instance, say you had a dining room tabletop that was satin like that. If we wet sanded the whole top and got it completely flat again and polished it, it would be crystal clear because we've taken the glass and smoothed out the glass.
So how do you get the satin? So how do you make this satin again?
Spray satin finish over to you.
Okay.
Especially lacquer. That's it. That's it.
Lacquer would be good.
Because lacquer is so.
So you can see that satin finishes, they do nothing to enhance the wood itself, the work that you do. If you use satin finishes, they distract from the wood, from your work. And the satin finishes were actually introduced in America back when you started hearing advertising on TV made out of natural wood and wood products. Remember that? Cherry and cherry veneers?
Yeah.
Cherry and wood products and all that, you know? Okay, what they're talking about is photograph finish, paper, or veneers over paper. Okay. You might have solid wood post, but that back and headboard, footboard is going to be paper or something like that. So it's mixed media, so to speak. Previous to then, everything was solid wood. Dixie manufacturer here in Georgia, after the war, made hundreds of thousands of pieces of furniture in the Duncan Fife and Sheraton style and all that for the soldiers coming, for people coming back from war, and the economy really picking up. And Dixie Furniture was probably, like I said, the manufacturer of the least expensive furniture, but still had the look to it, right? It still had that Chippendale look or whatever. All of it was red mahogany, basically. But it all had polished lacquer finishes on it. So now all the furniture manufacturers are putting out satin finishes in China, not in America, because we don't do it here anymore. We don't make stuff here anymore. Yeah. So, and they do satin finishes to hide crummy workmanship and inferior materials. And we've been sold a bill of goods that this is the latest rage. Everything has to be satin. Whereas before, the 60s, the era of the Pinto, there was no such thing as a satin finish. Truly, everything was polished. And so when you manufacture something, the people that did that type of work in the factory, they're gone. Because everything's off the gun.
I will say, if you try to do a gloss finish, you better have done your work, because it highlights anything that's a
anything that's wrong with it, it magnifies.
It magnifies.
Well, see, that's why gloss finishes are usually a fine work, because it magnifies it.
Right.
It makes it more beautiful, more depth and clarity. And another thing, if you've ever used a penetrating oil finish, and you want to get that beautiful shimmering effect when you walk around and it changes colors, you know how woods do that? The only way that's achievable is by putting a film finish that is proud of the surface itself. When you look at polished mirror finishes, they're always built up enough to where they're above the surface. So that means when the light goes through it, it lights up what's below it. If you don't have that buildup on the surface, you won't get that beautiful three-dimensional effect.
How thick?
As many coats as you need.
As many coats as you need.
As many coats as it takes.
I have a question. friend of mine, again, voted, swapped some paint by accident, I'm sure, on the flywheel of the boat. The flywheel is made out of mahogany. Asked me if I could get the paint off. I said, I'm drawing a blank on how to get the paint off the wheel without messing up the finish on the wheel.
Well, it depends. Well, more than likely it's an oil-based paint, and if that's on mahogany, you just have to take a stripper and strip it off, and that's going to affect what's below it. I mean, you know, woodworking has its limitations,
Yeah.
so it's finishing.
I just figured maybe.
You know, it's some situations you just can't avoid. That's what you got to do.
Okay.
Oh, come on, y'all got more than this.
It's awesome. I learned a lot already.
So on the lines of finishing 101, what's the difference between shellac and lacquer?
Shellac is shellac, lacquer is lacquer.
Okay.
Lacquer is a synthetic product, or synthesized product, if you will, and shellac is what is shellac?
It's the dung of a bug.
It's the dung of a bug. It's bug dung.
Okay.
Now, shellac was the finish of choice all the way up until the 50s. Well, no, excuse me, all the way up until the 20s worldwide. That's all everybody ever used was shellac, because it got hard, clear. You could fix it. You could put layer after layer because it would melt into the previous coat. That's what we call reversible finishing. If y'all took a class, you would know what I'm talking about. But shellac is now the other thing about shellac is what do you melt shellac in?
Alcohol.
Alcohol, right. So what's the best alcohol to melt your shellac in? How many old days you go buy grain alcohol at the store and make purple juices for that or whatever for your parties? Well, grain alcohol is the ideal medium for mixing your shellac in.
It doesn't have a poison in it. What is it?
It's just nothing but grain alcohol. Moonshine's great. Yeah, so if you mix up your shellac and you put it on, if you got whatever you got left of it, you just wait and drink it. You're good.
Do not try that.
The animal dung.
It's bug dung. The lactam, what's the name of the bug? It's lactam bug or something like that. And it's in a specific area of northern China and India and that area right there. And right now we're having a supply problem with the shellac. I saw a film on how they produce this stuff, and they actually go to the trees and break off the limbs and all this kind of stuff, and it's all encrusted with dung. And they'll scrape it off into a big round metal thing, and they have a big fire under it. And once they get enough in there, it just melts into a liquid. They take that, and it's really hot, and they put it, they take it, just throw it on the ground real quick. And you know how when water hits dirt that's real powdery, it gets that like dirt over, you just see a bubble of dirt. Well, it looks like a bubble of dirt, and they put their feet on it and go down and pick it up and stretch it out like this as far as they can while it's still soft enough to do that, and just let it get hard to drop. It takes about a minute. They just drop it and breaks it into a million pieces, and they sweep it all up. The next person takes that, remelts it, and refines it. So it's refined and refined and refined and refined. Shellac is a great finish, and we've been eating it for years. That's why M&Ms don't melt in your mouth. They melt in your mouth and not in your hand. They did it during World War II. They coated M&Ms with shellac so they could have them in the field and they wouldn't melt in their pockets. Melts in your mouth and not in your hand. So that's, you're eating bug juice.
Does the flakes ever go back?
What?
Does the flakes go back? If it's kept dry?
No.
I didn't think so.
Sure. When you mix it up, anything that's organic, it's going to go bad over a period of time. But shellac in its dry form is, I guess you could store dung for a long time.
I just wonder, I've got some that's really old, but it seems to be still.
All you have to do is mix it up with some Everclear and put it on something and give it about a half an hour. If it isn't dry, really push on it hard, you don't get a print, then it's still good. If it prints within a half an hour, it's no good. So just drink it, buy some more.
I see.
But you can't drink it. If it's no good, you can still drink it. It just won't try.
Remember, most alcohol is denatured.
Yeah, okay, denatured alcohol is what you mix it with. Denatured, not natural is what they're saying. They put an additive in it so it makes you sick if you drink it. So you can't drink denatured alcohol. That's why I said buy Everclear so you can always drink your shellac.
Who's your moonshine source? Get this on video.
No, but shellac's a fabulous finish, and once you learn how to use it right, it's just unsurpassed as far as beauty goes. Whenever you go to a major museum, you see museum pieces, they're all French polished.
That's what I figured.
And one thing that really kind of riles me a little bit is that in Europe, I'm sure you've all been to museums in Europe, the furniture looks perfect. It looks just like the day it was built. And over here, it's supposed to look ratty, you know, after all these years. And the difference being is that over there, their philosophy is, and I asked the curator over there, he says, well, over here, we want to have the maker's intent obvious right in front of you. So you can see exactly what he did all the time. So before we display anything, we restore it completely, you know, conservatives restore it to its complete original condition, trying to use the exact same finishes and everything else. So in America, if you take the finish off, you ruin the piece of furniture. You know, but is that the original finish? We really don't know because we weren't there. They built it, so.
I think one thing that plays into that, though, is in Europe, they are not as air conditioned as we are.
No, not at all.
So a lot of the original people, when they built the furniture in the 1800s and stuff, they built it with movement in mind in the first place and didn't put it into a super dry environment afterwards where it wasn't designed to be. Well, what I'm saying is that if I build something with air-dried wood and keep it in an air-dried environment, it keeps better than if I throw it in an air conditioner. Back then, it didn't have to worry about air conditioning.
Well, back then, if you think about it, most people that could afford furniture, they had help. They took care of the furniture. They had wax it.
Yeah.
And that also helped preserve a lot. And you're right. There's lots of furniture over there that had the original finish on it, but still in very good condition. And it has a lot to do with the environment. But it also has a lot to do with them never putting oils on their furniture. They always put wax on their furniture. And somewhere in the late 90s, I decided to do a column on wood preservation, the history of wood preservation. All this will be really interesting. So I'll fly to England and meet up with a guy that took care of Westminster Abbey. And he was going to show me around and explain to me the history of wood preservation because he had his doctorate in something that related to that. And so I went to Westminster. He met me. He was a very, very nice guy. He took me all around the church, and I got to see areas that you can't go into. And my butt was about that close to the coronation chair, and he caught me before I could sit down in it because a lot of famous people sat in that chair. I was trying to get my rear end or nothing, and he caught me. But anyway, when it came to actually the preservation of those giant doors and all that woodworking there wasn't any. Everybody's familiar with pickled oak or limed oak. What they would do, all the other surfaces, they would just rub lime into them because that would keep the bugs from eating it, and that would also turn it kind of blondish and look pickled. So that's what we call pickling over here. But over there they call it liming. So liming was the first thing they used to preserve the wood, or just keep bugs out of it. It wasn't preservation. But the other thing was, it's like the big giant doors on the sides and all that, they're like this thick. No preservatives there, just age. The people that built the doors knew that they would be dead probably by about 950 years before this thing rotted. So they just built things to last because they were so massive. When you look at the English Tudor houses that have the exposed beams and all that, I mean, these are massive pieces of wood. And it takes, you know, hundreds of years for those things to rot. So the generation that built them didn't worry about it because they knew that it would last far beyond their lifetime. But the first thing that they actually used to put on wood to help to keep moisture out of it was tar. And there's a type of oak that comes from England. Now, I think it comes from the tar pits. That's just super black all the way through. Really beautiful wood. And we use roofing tar all the time as a color. That's one of the ways we blend things together is by using roofing tar as a glaze between coats of finish. Roofing tar imparts a beautiful color to whatever you put it over top of, because if you've ever seen oil on water and sunlight hits it, what do you see? Colors. You see a rainbow of colors, right. So if you have a layer of tar, clear tar, sandwiched in between the layers of finish, whatever's below that's going to be enhanced when light goes through that tar. It gives you a look that you cannot match it any other way. You have to use the roofing tar to match it. And we use it all the time as a booster or just another avenue for us to match a new finish to an old one.
I guess I'm not hearing you. Can you spell it? I don't know the tar you're talking about.
A-S-P-H-A-L-T-U-M, asphaltum, roofing tar.
Roofing tar. What do you use to cut it with?
Mineral spirits.
Mineral spirits.
Now, if you buy a Gooby Gone or a tar remover, just go buy some mineral spirits because that's all it is. Goof off is just mineral spirits.
You're talking about tar, you're talking about black roofing?
Black tar. We use it all the time.
Well,
but you thinned it out a whole
We thin it usually like 2 tablespoons per quart. Like we mix it up to where it's consistency of milk, and so it's mostly mineral spirits. But and Also, any oil-based staining, you can just mix that in your with it to give it to change the color. So, you know, if you're trying to match something, use everything you can find. So put some tar in there too, maybe that'll match.
I'm sure not talking about that plastic roof cement. You're talking about.
I'm talking about the foundation coating. You know, in other words, I buy mine by the 5-gallon bucket, and it says, you know, pure asphalt on it.
Asphalt.
Non-fibered asphalt. No.
Hey, everybody, thank you.